the underworld, Matteo De Luca was untouchable. Hat was the word whispered in back rooms and behind locked doors. Untouchable. Not because he was the most brutal, but because he was the most controlled. He ran the De Luca syndicate with precision. No impulsive bloodshed, no sloppy emotions, no weaknesses anyone could exploit. A.D. above all, no scandal. Bobby R.H.'s wife, Sofia De Luca, was part of that control. B.R.L. Gant, silent, observant. She never interfered, never embarrassed him, never questioned his authority in public. The other bosses envied Matteo, not just for his power, but for the woman who stood beside him like a queen carved from marble. Why didn't know the truth, but BR, so Ia had built his empire just as much as he had. BRsh, read people better than any consigliere. She knew which alliances were rotting, which men were lying, which deals would collapse under pressure. Matteo trusted her instincts more than his own, but only in private. Bar in public, she was invisible by design. Night. Everything cracked began like any other. Bar a elibration, a successful weapons deal, a private club washed in low red light and expensive perfume. Music pulsed like a heartbeat. Glasses clinked. Men laughed too loudly. BBR. So, Ia didn't attend. Barsh rarely did anymore. Bar Ma. Teo told himself it was because she preferred quiet, that she didn't like the noise, the smoke, the pretense. He told himself many things that made it easier not to notice the distance between them growing like a hairline fracture in stone. Brr. That was when Elena sat beside him. She was younger, too young to belong in a room like that, but fearless enough to act like she did. Dark hair, sharp eyes, a dress that promised trouble and delivered it effortlessly. "You look bored," she said, leaning close enough for him to smell her perfume. "I'm not," Matteo replied. She smiled like she knew better. "You run an empire," she said. "That kind of power gets lonely." He should have moved away. He didn't. He told himself it meant nothing. A distraction, a release, one night that would dissolve into nothing by morning. That lie would cost him everything. The mistake wasn't the woman, it was the timing. Because while Matteo was making choices he would later regret, Sofia was awake. She sat alone in their penthouse, lights dimmed, city glittering beneath the windows. She hadn't waited up for him in years, not out of anger, but because she'd learned that waiting didn't change anything. Her phone vibrated, once, twice, a message from a number she didn't recognize. "You deserve to know who you're married to." Attached was a photo. Matteo, Elena. Close enough that denial was impossible. His hand on the small of the woman's back. His face turned toward her in a way Sofia hadn't seen in a long time. Sofia stared at the image. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply closed her eyes and let the truth settle. Infidelity wasn't new in their world. Many bosses kept mistresses. Many wives tolerated it in exchange for protection and status. But Matteo had promised her something different. "You're my equal," he'd said once. "I don't rule alone." That promise shattered quietly. By the time Matteo returned home just before dawn, Sofia was gone. Her closet was untouched, designer dresses still hanging, jewelry still locked away. Anyone else would have thought she'd left nothing behind. Matteo knew better. The documents were missing, the real ones. The handwritten ledgers she kept hidden behind false walls. The coded notebooks mapping every alliance, every secret weakness, every silent favor owed to the De Luca family. His pulse spiked. Bar. E went to his office, fingers trembling as he opened the hidden safe behind the painting. Bar. Empty, or the first time in 15 years. Fear crept in. Bar. OT fear of rivals. Ear of the woman who knew him better than anyone alive. Bar. Why morning? Rumors began to spread. Bar. Sofia De Luca had left. Me said she'd fled. Others whispered she'd been killed. A few claimed Matteo had finally lost control. A. The weekly council meeting. Mateo felt the shift immediately. Bar M. N, who once waited for his words, now exchanged glances. One boss arrived late, an insult that would have been unthinkable a month ago. Another questioned a shipment delay openly. M. Teo answered calmly. B. T. His power was already bleeding. BRB, 'cause Sophia hadn't just been his wife. S. E had been the silent spine of his authority. T. At afternoon, Mateo finally found the note she had left, tucked into a book she knew he never opened. Y. You broke the only rule I ever gave you. Bar first, will not destroy you. Bar B. T. I will not protect you anymore. T. E words hit harder than any threat. BRB. Nightfall, one of Mateo's ports was seized. B. The next morning, a longtime ally withdrew support. BR. Thin 48 hours. The empire Mateo had spent a lifetime building began to fracture. Piece by piece. Precisely. Methodically. Bar J. ST, like Sophia, always did everything. A. D. Somwa Bar. Air across the city, Sofia De Luca watched the collapse begin, not with revenge in her heart, but with clarity. He hadn't left to punish him, he had left to reclaim herself. ND Mateo De Luca was about to learn the most dangerous truth of all. Bar first. One night of infidelity, he hadn't just lost his marriage. Bar H. Had lost the woman who made him powerful. S. Fia De Luca had not always been a mafia wife. Low G before silk gowns and charity galas. She had lived in a cramped apartment above a tailor shop in Palermo. Her mother stitched wedding dresses for women who whispered prayers while being measured, and her father had been a quiet man who taught Sophia how to listen more than she spoke. P. Opal reveal themselves when they think no one important is watching, he used to say. So, Ia learned early that invisibility could be a weapon. But Biarsh met Mateo when she was 22. He wasn't a boss then, just a rising lieutenant with ambition sharpened to a blade. He noticed her not because she was loud or flirtatious, but because she saw him. She asked questions no one else dared. She remembered details men forgot they had shared. He fell in love with her mind before her beauty. What? And Mateo proposed, his mentor laughed. Bar A. Wife is a liability, the old man said. Mateo ignored him. Thick T decision had built his empire. No. Years later, Sophia sat in a quiet villa on the coast, one of many properties no one but her knew existed. She watched the sea crash against stone, calm on the surface, relentless burr. Underneath, her phone buzzed constantly. Messages from lieutenants, from accountants, from men who thought Mateo ruled alone. She answered none of them. Instead, she opened one of her notebooks. Every favor Mateo had ever done, every debt owed, every compromise made in the dark. Power wasn't brute force, it was memory. Back in the city, Mateo struggled to hold the line. Without Sophia filtering information, lies reached him unchallenged. 2 captains fed him conflicting reports. A shipment arrived late, intentionally sabotaged by a partner who sensed weakness. Mateo called a meeting with his inner circle. Who leaked our port schedule? He demanded. Silence. He realized then what had truly vanished. No one was afraid of disappointing him anymore. Meanwhile, Sophia made her first move. She didn't strike directly. She called Renata Russo, the widow of a rival boss Mateo had crushed years earlier. A woman everyone assumed was harmless now, kept wealthy and quiet as compensation. Renata answered on the first ring. I was wondering when you'd call, Renata said. You've been waiting? Sophia asked. For years, Renata replied calmly. They met over tea, 2 women the men had underestimated. Sophia offered her protection, information, a chance to step out of the shadow she'd been forced into. Renata accepted. By the end of the week, 3 mid-level operations quietly changed hands. Matteo noticed the losses, but couldn't trace them. The men executing the changes were loyal to Sofia, to the system she had built. One night, Matteo stood alone in his office, staring at the city skyline. He poured a drink and didn't taste it. He replayed that night over and over. The moment he leaned closer, the second he'd convinced himself Sofia would never leave. He hadn't just betrayed her trust. He'd revealed his arrogance. Across the city, Elena realized her mistake. She hadn't been a distraction. She had been bait. Men stopped answering her calls. Invitations vanished. Even Matteo barely acknowledged her existence now. She tried to reach Sofia. The message was returned unopened. Sofia had no interest in punishing her. She was dismantling something far larger. By the time Matteo finally tracked Sofia's location, it was too late. She was already gone, but she had left something behind. A message delivered through 3 intermediaries. I gave you power because you respected me. You lost it because you forgot what made you strong. Matteo crushed the paper in his fist. For the first time in his life, he understood something terrifying. He hadn't been the architect of his empire. He had been its face. And the woman he betrayed was now rewriting the rules. Power didn't disappear all at once. It bled. Matteo De Luca learned that lesson the hard way. First, it was small things. Missed calls, delayed payments, meetings that needed to be rescheduled. Men who once arrived early now came late, if they came at all. Information arrived filtered, softened, or too late to matter. He could feel the city shifting under his feet. And worse, he couldn't see where the knife was coming from. At a private dinner with 2 allied bosses, Matteo noticed the change immediately. The laughter was forced, the wine untouched. When he spoke, they listened politely, but their eyes drifted, calculating. You're stretched thin, one of them said casually. Maybe it's time to consolidate. Consolidate. The word tasted like blood. Matteo forced a smile. My house is in order. The men exchanged a glance that confirmed the opposite. By the time Matteo returned to his car, his driver leaned close. Boss, Russo's ports just switched security contractors. Matteo stiffened. Russo had been neutral, untouchable, protected by Sofia. Across the city, Sofia watched reports come in from 6 channels. Coded emails, burner phones, handwritten notes passed through trusted couriers. She moved calmly, deliberately, like a chess player dismantling a board she knew by heart. She hadn't planned to destroy Matteo, but she wasn't going to save him either. Every system she'd built for him now worked without him. The difference was subtle but lethal. Back in his compound, Matteo summoned his lieutenants. I want names, he said quietly. Who's wavering? No one answered. That silence was louder than betrayal. Finally, Marco, his oldest enforcer, spoke. Men are nervous. They hear Sofia's name more than yours. The words hit Matteo harder than any gunshot. My wife is gone, Matteo snapped. She has no authority. Marco didn't flinch. With respect, boss. She always did. Matteo dismissed them all. Alone, he poured another drink and didn't finish it. For the first time, he felt something unfamiliar crawling up his spine. Regret. Not for the affair, for underestimating the woman who had made him untouchable. Sofia's next move was surgical. She didn't attack Matteo directly. She attacked certainty. She leaked just enough information to spark suspicion. Old emails hinting at secret deals, half-confirmed rumors of Matteo cutting side agreements. Nothing provable, everything believable, trust eroded. Men began protecting themselves instead of the family. A truck was hijacked, but the attackers vanished without a trace. A warehouse burned, but no one claimed it. It was chaos without fingerprints. Matteo tried to retaliate. He ordered a hit on a rival crew he believed was behind the disruptions. The hit failed. Worse, his men walked into an ambush, 3 dead, 2 captured, 1 talked. The name that came back to Matteo chilled him. Renata Russo, Sophia's ally. The realization slammed into him. This wasn't a power grab, it was a lesson. Sophia wasn't replacing him. She was proving he'd never ruled alone. That night, Matteo did something unthinkable. He went to Elena. She opened the door already crying. "I didn't mean to ruin anything," she said immediately. "I swear." Matteo didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He looked at her like she was a ghost. "Who said?" "Into you?" he asked calmly. Her breath hitched. "No one." He stepped closer. "You didn't just stumble into my world." Tears spilled. "I was introduced." "By who?" "Silence." Matteo's voice dropped. "Elena, if you lied to me now, I can't protect you." She whispered the truth. A fixer. One connected to Sophia years ago. A contingency. Sophia had planted Elena long before Matteo ever noticed her. Not to seduce him, to test him, and he had failed. The realization hollowed him out. He left Elena sobbing on the floor. Across the sea, Sophia closed a file and leaned back in her chair. She hadn't planned for Matteo to fall into temptation, but she had prepared for the possibility, because power didn't forgive arrogance. Days later, the council called an emergency meeting. Matteo arrived to find his seat gone. No announcement, no explanation, just absence. He stood there, the room buzzing with quiet conversations that stopped when he entered. "You're still welcome to speak," one boss said carefully. "But decisions will be made by vote." Vote. Matteo had never voted. He left without speaking. Outside, rain soaked his coat as he stared at the city that once bowed to him. He finally understood. Sophia hadn't taken his power. She had simply stepped away and let the truth reveal itself. That night, Matteo sent a message through channels only she would recognize. "I was wrong." No response. He sent another. "I need you." Hours passed. Nothing. Then, just before dawn, his phone vibrated. One message. "You never needed me. You just respected me once." Matteo closed his eyes. For the first time, he wasn't thinking like a boss. He was thinking like a man who had lost something irreplaceable. And the city sensed it, because when a king begins to doubt himself, blood always follows. The city felt it before it saw it. When power fractures, the air changes, deals stall, guns come out sooner, men stop trusting shadows. Within days, violence crept closer to the surface. Unclaimed hits, burned storefronts, bodies left where they could be seen. The silence Sophia had weaponized was breaking, and Matteo knew what that meant. If he didn't act now, the city would tear itself apart trying to decide who ruled it. For the first time in his career, Matteo De Luca made a move without calculating how it would look. Barra. E went after Sophia. OT with guns, bar. OT with threats. Bar. It's truth. E dismissed his security and traveled alone, crossing borders without announcing himself. No entourage, no protection. A former king moving through the world like an Burr. Ordinary man. By the time he reached the coastal region, word had already spread. Matteo De Luca was vulnerable. Woe crews considered killing him on the road. Bar. Oth backed off. O1 wanted to start a war they couldn't finish. Ophia was in the villa when he arrived. Burr. He knew he was coming. He always did, Burr. He gate opened without resistance. Oh, guards. No alarms. Just quiet waves and white stone. Matteo stepped inside and saw her standing by the window, dressed simply, hair loose, a woman unburdened by the weight she had carried for years. Burr. He didn't turn. "You shouldn't be here," she said calmly. Burr. "I shouldn't have done a lot of things," he replied. Islands stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Ear. Innily she faced him. "You're not here to apologize," Sophia said. "You're here because you're losing." Brar. Matteo nodded once. Yes. He surprised even him, bruh. I don't want the empire back the way it was, he said quietly. I want to stop the blood. Sophia studied him. Bruh, for years, she said, I prevented blood you never even knew was coming. He swallowed. I know that now, brr. He walked past him, poured herself water, offered him none bar. The city is choosing, she continued. They're choosing systems over men, stability over ego bar. And you? He asked, bar. I already chose, she replied. Mateo took a step closer. Come back. Not as my wife, as my equal, publicly. We rebuild differently, bar. He laughed softly. Too late. Bar. Hose. 2 words landed harder than a bullet. You broke ba. More than trust, she said. You broke the illusion that you were capable of humility. I'm kneeling now, he said, and he did. The most feared man in the city lowered himself to the marble floor. Not theatrically, not dramatically, simply, honestly. If I lose everything, he said, voice steady, so be it. But the city will burn without balance. Help me stop that. Sophia looked down at him, not with triumph, with grief. You taught me something valuable, she said. That loving you meant carrying your weight. She stepped back. I won't do that again. She handed him a folder. Inside were documents, transfer of power agreements, contingency plans, names of neutral arbiters. I'm dismantling the throne, she said, not taking it. Mateo stared at the papers. You're ending the era, he whispered. Yes, she replied. Before it ends us. As Mateo left the villa, news broke across the city. The De Luca syndicate was fragmenting by design, territories restructured, independent crews legitimized, old debts erased, new rules enforced BR. Violence slowed. Hens stopped, bar, OT, because of fear, bar, because no one could justify it anymore. Mateo returned to the city a diminished man. Oh palace, no council seat, no unquestioned authority bar. UT, he was alive, bar. ND, so was the city. Weeks later, Sophia watched from a distance as Mateo testified, not to police, but to mediators. He spoke plainly, gave up assets, took responsibility, bar. He felt nothing, bar. ND, that was her freedom. And her final night in the villa, she packed lightly, bar. Oh ledgers, bar. Oh secrets, bar. Us herself. She closed the door, her phone buzzed, bar. Single message from Mateo, bar. Understand now, bar. He deleted it without reply, because understanding was no longer her burden, bopper. He city would survive, bar. Mateo would survive. But the era of men mistaking power for ownership was over. ND, it ended the night a woman refused to protect the man who betrayed her, per hour leaves quietly. OT in gunfire or explosions, but in empty rooms, unreturned calls, and the sudden realization that no one is waiting for your orders. Mateo De Luca learned this in silence. Penthouse was gone. Sold. Converted. Someone else lived there now. Someone who had no idea how many decisions shaping the city had once been made beneath those ceilings. Teo lived in a modest apartment overlooking a street that NBR ever slept. He watched from the balcony as ordinary life moved forward. Vendors arguing, couples laughing, children chasing pigeons. A world that had continued without him. The council no longer summoned him. When they did speak his name, it was in the past tense. He wasn't hunted. He wasn't honored. He was allowed. And that was the sharpest punishment of all. Each morning, Mateo woke without purpose. No strategy meetings, no coded messages, no weight of command. He began walking the city, not surveying it, belonging to it. He passed neighborhoods he'd once controlled through fear and favor. Now they ran on community agreements, quiet enforcement, fragile peace. Sophia's design, he saw her everywhere, without ever seeing her. In the stability, in the absence of chaos. in the fact that no one had stepped into the vacuum he left behind. She'd removed the throne itself. Across the sea, Sofia De Luca boarded a train alone, bruh. He had sold the villa, donated most of the money to organizations that helped women disappear safely. New names, new lives, no questions. He kept no empire.bar, enlie distance.br. Or the first time since she was 22, she woke up without calculating risk. He rented a small apartment in a city where no one knew her face. She took a consulting job under a false surname, helping companies identify internal weaknesses, DR. Hay praised her insight. Hay never asked where it came from. BB. Times. At night, memories surfaced. BBA. Ateo laughing quietly over late dinners. Iber. Ba. S. Hand on hers during negotiations. The man he had been, before he mistook loyalty for ownership. She didn't hate him, but love, she'd learned, was not obligation. One afternoon, months later, Matteo received a letter, handwritten, no return address. The city is stable. The bloodshed has not returned. That was my final responsibility. This is yours. Attached was a deed to a community center in one of the neighborhoods once ravaged by his operations. Matteo stared at the paper for a long time. Then he cried. Not for the empire, for the chance he hadn't deserved. He reopened the center, not as a benefactor, as a worker. He cleaned floors, fixed wiring, learned names. People were wary, then indifferent, then accepting. No one bowed. And that was how healing began. Years later, no one spoke of Matteo De Luca as a boss. He spoke of him as a man who fell and stayed down long enough to change Bar. S for Sofia. Brar, he never returned. You'd sometimes, when the city held its breath and didn't collapse, people whispered her name. Bar. OT as a queen. OT as a criminal. Bar. UT as the woman who proved that power borrowed from loyalty is the most fragile kind of all. ND, that one night of infidelity didn't just cost a mafia boss his marriage. T revealed the truth he'd never been brave enough to face. E had never ruled alone. ND, once the woman who made him powerful walked away. He throne was nothing but an empty chair. War stories are coming soon. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.